Hello and welcome back. So this is a little format then of what I usually do. Like I said in the video this morning that I was going down to Medina to talk to the guy who is a lot more knowledgeable in bikes than I am now. I was 30 years ago. Not this. This is the bike that was about 2,600 bucks back in 1997. We discussed the things that he's going to replace on here, make it better, keep it with theme. But this video is not about this bike. This video is about the bikes that are all behind the camera. And what John serendipitously kind of fell into something that I find to be very noble. So John, thanks for having me down here. And
I'm Johnny Hall, and coming to you live from Bike Johnny's Bike Shop here in Medina, Ohio. I was hoping that Derek had lost my number because I was really jonesing to get after this full suspension Univega back here. So I got to looking at it, I'm like, man, that is really nice. And you picked it up for how much? And I'm just totally jealous. I'm more honored to work on it because I'm a total fan of Univega and what that brand means to the bicycling industry. This is my bike shop. My wife calls it her garage, and she insists on parking in it in the wintertime. So most of my bikes are in storage right now. I do have a few here that are going to be a program that I think Derek wanted me to expound upon. So a little bit before that, a little backstory here. I'm a retired Coast Guard veteran. I served 24 years. I gave them the best years of my life, and I'm trying to get those back. So I got stationed here almost 20 years ago, and I retired 13 years ago, and working here in the area. And I didn't really set out to do this with bikes. I used to do a lot of biking way back in the early 90s, mid 90s, all the way up until the late 90s, and probably till about 24 years ago. Kind of lost my taste for it. Lifestyle changes, have kids, things get in the way, life gets in the way. So kind of fell out of it. But I got back into it several years ago. And I started looking at the newer bikes that were in the bike shops. Nothing against what they're trying to do. But part of that, I'm like, well, let me look at the older bikes, the ones that I know about. So I found one and I rehabbed it and I started riding. And then I would get home and my daughter says, I want a bike. So I got her a bike. And then one of my sons says, I want a bike. So I got him a bike. And what I found is that I found solace in the ability to go through these bikes and take them essentially from a heap of rubble into something that was usable, and they were able to fulfill their true function. And that is, being ridden and giving us, a good living life experience. So then people at church were saying, oh, I need a bike. I need a bike. So I kind of became this Pied Piper for this vintage bike thing. So that's kind of where I sunk my teeth into. Well, let's fast forward a year or two. And I got,
so now what year are we at now?
Probably 2022 or 2023.
Oh, okay, so very recent.
Just just very recently I got back in. But I got a call from a friend who's a pastor. He works with Northeast Ohio Youth for Christ, and he was doing a program in Brunswick called a Wrench and Ride program.
Brunswick is the next town over.
Next town north of us. I can't remember who it was. It was either Fox 8 or one of those. They came out and did a little story on us. But I started working on these bikes mostly as an outreach for the children in Brunswick that were going to Brunswick Middle School. We would find these old derelict bikes. I would scour the countryside anywhere between here and Warren, all the way down to Ashland.
Youngstown
area, yes, of course.
That's going to be Warren, Youngstown.
Yes. Warren,
Ashland's going to be Mansfield area, the Mansfield prison from Shawshank Redemption, that area.
That one, yes, exactly. So started getting all these bikes together, and then what we would do is we would have a kid go with us into, it's like, hey, pick out a bike. Okay, now we're going to teach you how to work on it. We're going to teach you how to straighten wheels, repack bearings, change tires, stuff like that. So, and at the end of rehabbing that bike, they got to keep it. So there was that part of it. But then a friend of mine, Keith Johnston, runs an organization called Running to Be Well. And Running to Be Well is geared towards those who are now in like a sober living situation, people who have been through rehab. They don't have a car. They don't have a license. They've made maybe not the best choices in life. But they still have places to be. They have to be in court. They have to be at the doctor. They have to go to work. Well, Running to Be Well caters to that that population. And it's an organization where these people who are in these sober living conditions are able to get out and be in an environment where they are exercising. The tagline for Running to Be Well is called Activate Happy. So what that is when you have these people who are exercising, they're able to set goals. One of the groups that Running to Be Well is working with is over in Grafton Correctional, and they have inmates in there who are running half and full marathons in the prison yard. They are setting these goals, and you have a lot of these people saying, I didn't know that I could do this, and if I can do this, I can do anything.
So I want to ask on the marathon, is that something that Running to Be Well has influenced the persons in the facility? I mean,
Yes.
I don't want to colloquially just call them prisoners, but
Yes, inmates, prisoners.
They're not in the free world.
They are not in the free
But they're
world,
making the
no.
best of what they can by
Yes.
improving. Now,
Yes.
go back to the marathon. Is that something that the program that you mentioned about Keith, and I guess you're going to give me information about Keith, and I can share with them, share with the viewers. Is the marathon something that the program influenced people to start doing, or was that something that the prison was already doing?
No, they were
it
not
took you
doing
guys to boost them to do it.
They were not doing
So
it.
you guys brought, or him at least, brought this idea.
Yes.
And how has that kind of grown so far?
Him and some of the mentors were able to get in there, and this is not the only program like this. There are programs like this in other parts of the country. There is a documentary called 26 to Life. It is about a runner in San Quentin.
Now, to those who don't know San Quentin,
that's big prison out in California. I mean, you're talking about some of the worst that go there. And the program that was started there within the confines of that prison. This is totally different than Running to Be Well.
but the 26 to Life is...
It's a documentary that they can watch.
What Running to Well does, is it like an emulation of
this?
Or is it just kind of the idea, the theme?
It never really started out to do that. Running to Be Well really catered to those who were in the sober living conditions. So you have these people who have been
So it's got a farther reach.
halfway houses, halfway houses. If you want to, put a more colloquial term on it, but we call them sober living houses. So you have these people, and we're just trying to get them back into a physical activity, because when you do that, it changes it changes your brain chemistry, and it allows you have these endorphins and stuff that are released, and that's where you get the runner's high. Now, I used to run. I did not run enough to get a runner's high, but
maybe
apparently it happened. Right. Maybe I just didn't run far enough. I don't know.
You didn't run right.
I get it from cycling, though. I do that, and I go in I get that rush. So I understand it. But the Running to Be Well program was mainly for that. And there's chapters in Lorraine. There's chapters here in Medina. There's Wadsworth. There's Kent. There's a whole bunch of these. It allows them to get in a setting with people who have been through the same struggles. It's judgment-free, and it gets them actually outside of their own headspace and allows them to experience this with other people. Running to Be Well, they were doing that with sober living, and then Keith decides, it's like, hey, we have ministries in prisons, but we don't have this type of thing in a prison. So it allows them to set these goals. Now, you have some of these guys who have never run before, and they are running a 5K within the prison yard, and then they will run maybe a 10K. And then you have people who do it, who continue doing it and continue getting better at it, to the point where they're running half and full marathons within the yard. The view is not as great as you might have, like say for Boston or New York.
A lot of
LA.
orange. A lot of orange.
A lot of something. I don't know. I've never been in there.
A lot of orange and gray.
Maybe, yeah, I'm sure, and a lot of people watching you. But so it's that type of thing. And what studies have shown is that when people are involved in these type of programs, whether it be sober living or people who are in prison, is that once they are released or they are back out into a normal community setting, is that the rates of reoffense or recidivism go way, way down, because now they have the ability.
Johnny a high five for that, because that's not an easy word for people to say.
It's not an easy word. Recidivism.
There you go. That's it. You got it.
So what it does, again, allows them to get outside of their headspace, allows them to set goals, and allows them to achieve those goals. So once they see that they have these coping mechanisms and skills now in their toolbox, so to speak, it helps them become better people, better members of the community, keeps them out of trouble, and it allows them to be mentors for those who are now going through what they went through maybe a year or two ago.
That is running for well, and you covered at least 2 foundation points of that, of what it was. It's not the first around, let's say this right. So running to be well is emulated from other programs, or was it kind of a spawn off from someone else's imagination? Like, hey, maybe I should do this and see what happens.
The gentleman who started it, Keith, he was always a runner, cyclist, exercise type of person, somebody who was deeply entrenched in that lifestyle, who saw a need and filled a need, which brings us back to Bike Johnny and Bike Johnny's vintage mountain bikes. Now, it's not all vintage mountain bikes, but what I do for Running to Be Well, my wife is on the board, and I help out. I do the bike marshal stuff.
And this is all volunteer?
Yeah, volunteer. And I'm at the front, so the runners know where to go when we're doing these 5Ks and stuff like that. But, we also have a lot of these people in these sober living conditions who, because they don't have a car, they don't have a license, they still have to get places. So I am like the bicycle extension of Running to Be Well. And I have these bikes, they'll get finished, and then they will go over to Keith's, and who, of course, runs the program, but he'll has all these people that report to him, hey, so-and-so is doing really well, they need a bike for this. So we have bikes stored up and ready to go for these type of people who are trying to reintegrate back into society. And we get them a bike, so they're not just hoofing it everywhere.
So to keep with the name, the title, the moniker you gave yourself, Bike Johnny, and specifically Vintage Bike Johnny, not just vintage you, but the bikes that these people get, are they your run-of-the-mill big box store bikes, or they tend to be a better quality bike?
They tend to be a better quality bike.
No, and why would you want that over a cheaper bike?
We're not giving them ultra high-end titanium, carbon fiber, stuff like that, but we're giving them something that is serviceable. The bikes that we get from big box stores, they tend to be inexpensively made, and thus they are harder to work on. The parts are not quite as robust. They break easier. So we tend to try to stick to some of the brand names, like Giant or Trek or something like that. Maybe
neither of the brands that we mentioned in this video. This video is not sponsored by any of them.
No, we're not. But we're not looking for big box store bikes. They just don't last. But also, we don't want to provide like an ultra high end bike, because sometimes these things are still target to be stolen. We can get them a Schwinn or a Trek or something like that, something that's going to last, something that is a quality product. But we get them in all different shapes, sizes, and colors. We get people who are touched by addiction. It's not a one size fits all. People who have struggled with it or are still struggling with it. We try to get them something that is going to at least last. I remember one of my first bikes when I was a kid. It was a terrible bike, and I really hated it. And I didn't like cycling.
Do not give a brand name.
No, I'm not. But no, this is back in the 70s.
Yeah.
But that's a thing that a lot of people do. They go and buy a bike from a big box store, and then they ride it, and it's like, this bike is terrible, and then they don't want to ride it anymore. A lot of bike shops used to, okay, we're going to fit you to this bike. We're not just going to say, oh, I like the color on that. You know what? That bike might not fit you. The cockpit might be wrong size, like from your hips to where your handlebars are. It might be the wrong size. So if you're not having a comfortable ride, it's not going to be enjoyable to ride. So I see a lot of people who say, oh, I don't like cycling. I don't like cycling. And then sometimes I'll get them hooked up with a bike, and they'll ride it and say, I didn't know a bike could ride this well. Now, I'm not some kind of Svengali when it comes to working on bikes, but I do have an organic talent for taking things that have been behind the shed or in the barn and turning them into something that is not only serviceable and functional, but is actually something that's quite pleasing to look at. So that's just, I try to make it fit a certain aesthetic, because who wants to ride an ugly bike? Who wants to drive an ugly car? You know, let's make it fun. Let's make it look good, and let's make it work even better.
So that is multifaceted. You keep things from the landfill.
Yep.
You keep chain companies and brake pad companies in business, right?
Yes.
But the other good facet is that you're putting something to use for people that need to work on their musculature of their body because of whatever their bad touch was way one ago. However, get back to I asked you before we started the video, what is it that got you to uh, being or doing the things for bikes, knowing that it's free, knowing that you spend your time and your money, and there will be links for information to where if you guys want to send something, whatever it may be. This is my first time I've ever asked for this. I'll send a link and you can send information and to help them out because this in the program, what you do, your wife, that did not sound right. Okay, so yourself.
That's got to stay in the video. It's got to stay in the video.
Yourself and your wife provide your time and services for this organization for free.
Yes.
He does this also for free. Now, he probably signed up for 501, and I don't know about all that. This conversation is not about that. Where is it in your heart? What is that soft spot that said, this is what I want to do? Now, it's not the only thing you do. You do work, but for your volunteer time, this is what you've elected to do. It still takes time and love and money. What is it that hit your soft spot on your heart, and you're like, this? Why? So this is kind of the dying question for me. Is like, I want to know on why you decide to put your time and money in bikes, not only your own passion, but what is that epiphanous moment? Epiphanous. We're going to go with the word.
Wow, I can give props back to you for saying the word epiphanous.
Yes. Oh, I have a robust lexicon.
That's fantastic. It really kind of started out in a change within myself. People, they started coming to me, Johnny, I'm looking for a bike for this, I'm looking for a bike for that. And that suits them and myself just fine. That's fine. That's a bike for us.
There's money involved in that?
Usually there's money involved in that. And like I was selling a lot of bikes a couple of years ago, and I was using that money to buy these bikes for the Wrench and Ride program in Brunswick now. And what I saw in a lot of those kids is a younger version of myself. And what struck me is that for those kids, I need to be the person that I needed when I was their age. You know, I needed a mentor. I needed somebody who had nothing to gain in a relationship other than trying to be a good person. And I was like, that's what I tried to be. So I saw a need and I filled a need. And then the running to be well thing just kind of landed in our lap. My wife is on the board for it. I am not. I'm not a member of it. I'm just like
just free labor.
I'm just free labor and good looks. So that's where I kind of got into it, and it's not just children who need mentors.
True.
It's adults that need mentors. Everybody needs a little bit of course correction along the way, and that course correction might come in different ways. It might be someone who is believing in someone. It might be someone who is gifting them with an asset that they can use to get back and forth to the doctor or work or what have you. It might be a person who is looking out for you and has your best interests at heart. So that's where I kind of found that I fit in. One of that I tell my guys that I work with, and I tell my boss as well at my regular job, I say, you get in where you fit in. And I found a place where I fit in. So I got in.
Do you have like a story of someone you give a bike to and you watch them grow from the recovery and they're out and they reach out to you or someone else or Keith and they're like, hey, if it wasn't for you and this bike, and that type of appreciation is always going to happen without anything, right?
Yeah.
But is there something that really stands out in regards to that makes your philanthropy feel more personally gratuitous?
Yes. And when I first started doing this, it was several years ago, and I was doing the bike marshal for one of the Running to Be Well events called Around the Beach. There's two big ones that I'm involved with. Around the Beach It's a fundraiser for these type of things. There was another young lady who was in a sober living house several years ago, and it's like, hey, this young lady needs a bike. Okay, fine. So I found this bike, purchased it local, Women's Schwinn, that was maybe at one point purchased at a big box store. Maybe it was a lower end bike shop bike type thing, but it was there, it was complete, and I was like, okay, we're going to go through this. And so we repaint a few things. We put new grips and redo the bearings and cables and all that kind of stuff. And by the time I got done with it, it was like, holy cow, look at this thing. It really came back to life with a little bit of care, with a little bit of attention and time. It came back to life.
Is this a parallel to
This
addiction?
is a parallel. I'm going to get to that. So,
Okay.
so
Yeah, I'm not letting you know. I'm paying attention.
no,
I'm
it's
listening.
good.
This is
That's
all
good. I'm glad
fascinating.
you're a
to me.
great listener, man.
Yeah.
So I need you to listen.
Yes.
So it was one of those, okay, I hand it off to Keith. Keith delivers it to the mentor who delivers it to this young lady. I don't want to say, she's probably in her 20s. They sent me a video of her riding it up and down the street. And it was like a little girl had been set loose on Christmas. Her enthusiasm and exuberance and appreciation for somebody being able to give this.
Going back to the question.
Well, that is one of those moments. But now, fast forward, last year, we're doing an event. And it's like, oh, hey, Johnny, you remember so-and-so? This is who you built that bike for. And I was like, wow. So you have this person who has come through the fire, has come through these trials, this tribulation of bettering herself and being in the Running to Be Well program, who is now a mentor to other people who were in the same position that she was in several years ago. So we see this lineage, these people who are looking back with this helping hand, helping these people through what they went through several years ago.
There's an idiom for that. An idiom with an M.
Oh, with an M.
Yes.
The T is silent. Yes.
Pay it forward.
Pay it forward. Yes. So that is really essentially what it is. But I got to the point where, okay, I'm going to rebuild this bike for this person. So there's a parallel between the bike and the person.
People running to be well. People who are interested in the biking aspects. So there's multiple aspects that you said because you handle the bike aspect, correct? And then there's probably running and jogging, probably weightlifting and other aspects, right? So you do the biking branch of it. Those people that are interested in the biking branch, do they just come to you and say any bike will do, or do you try to figure them out and build a bike to their personality, what you think would best be absorbed into them and their essence too? This will help you out more than just throwing you some yellow and blue bike, like good luck. Do you put love by basis of what you know about that person?
Are we going to provide a bike that has been tailored to somebody's wants and needs? And the short answer is no, but still, one of the key aspects is if the bike is not right for the person. If they are 6 feet tall, I'm not going to give them a bike with like 20-inch tires and a 16-inch frame on it. It's going to be too small for them. It's not going to be safe. So one of the first things I ask is, how tall is this person? We try to provide them a bike that suits them, that is going to be safe. I want to provide them something that is at least enjoyable, that is at least sized correctly, in the hopes that this is something that they will, and I use this a lot, that this is something that they are going to put in their toolbox as a skill, as an activity that they are going to continue throughout their life. Once they get out of the sober living, even when they get everything back on track, they get their license, they get an apartment, they get a car, they get this, that, and the other. I want them to enjoy it to the point where this is something that they want to do it as an activity.
So the intent is transportation for people who need it then and then.
Yes.
And then later, after accomplishments and that things are going more, I don't want to use the wrong jargon or term, but things are going way better and they have less of a need for the bike. You want them to be able to keep the bike and continue the bike and maybe spawn that off to other people.
I want that to go from a need to a want.
I want a bike.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to bike. Bike as a verb.
I want to ride a bicycle. Yes, that all stems back from when I was a kid. You know, I had a crappy bike, but then I got a better bike. You know, but it was when you lived in a rural area,
So where did you live, grow up, city
North Carolina. If you wanted to get somewhere, unless you were walking, you had a bike until you were old enough to have a license and a car and all that. So, but what a bike represents for me a certain amount of freedom. The feeling the feeling that I'm chasing is that of that I experienced when I was younger, much younger. And when you go fast and there is nothing in front of you but wind.
Better hope these things are working.
Yeah, you better hope those are working. It is just that exhilaration and that feeling of freedom that you get from riding. That
And anything from 15 miles an hour and above, if you lose balance or something doesn't go right to where two wheels are on the ground anymore and you're not in the cockpit, that still hurts.
It does.
It hurts a lot.
This is where I get into the public safety aspect of it. Ride with a helmet, a Snell approved helmet. There are several accidents that I've been in where I've been hit by cars. I have hit cars. I have gone off the trails. I have done some really dumb stunts in my youth. It's cheap insurance to protect probably the most valuable thing on your body, and that's going to be your head.
So that is a big crux on what you do, and there's a lot of information there. So when you're providing this stuff for them, do you also provide extra gear, such as the shoes, such as the cycling shorts, just because that's also a health thing? Because cycling shorts are just not for cushion. They also have hygienic purposes to them as well.
Yes.
They absorb a lot of that sweat. Do you provide that stuff there, the shoes, the helmets, the gloves? Do you provide that extra gear as well?
I do not, but I highly recommend that they wear, at a minimum, a helmet. So I do recommend gloves. I do recommend cycling shorts. Now, the long and short of it is that
Of the program.
Of the program, I do recommend that they have the proper gear. There are others in the Running to Be Well program who provide that type of stuff. Mostly just the helmets.
Other, not the program, people who work for the program, people who volunteer for the program provide this for those.
Yeah, they like helmets and stuff like that. So it's always one of the.
So it's just not all on you.
No, it's not all on me. I always ask that. It's like, look, does this person have a helmet? We're going to get them one.
No.
So it's always that type of thing. I don't really meet the people who are the recipients of the bikes because I'm up here. I'm just a volunteer. Then I hand them off to Keith, who runs the organization. He disperses them out to the mentor, who then eventually gets that down to the recipient of the bicycle. So I'm several layers removed from that, but it's always something that I'm asking. Does this person have a helmet? So I want them to ride safely. I want them to enjoy it. You know, I do implore them. I implore anybody who's watching this that if you are going to get on a bicycle, wear a helmet. Okay. I might get out here and ride in my driveway just to test one for shifting or braking and stuff like that.
Yeah, never ride without the brain bucket. Yeah. That's for darn sure. So ultimately, you have been involved with the program for a couple of years, it sounds like, because you said a couple of years ago, and it's now 2025. You said right around 2022 you started. Did you start with just the bike program, or just kind of a segue from the running to the bikes, and now more people, the idea or the germination of the idea of bikes came from you, or did someone in the program say, hey, do you do things with bikes? I hate running. So the basics, the grassroots of the bike part. I think we kind of dodged that. I asked toward the beginning, but kind of dodged that. What is the grassroots?
It was a couple of things. Number one, when I was involved with the Wrenching to Ride program at up in Brunswick, that just kind of dovetailed nicely with my friend Keith, who is running the program.
But he was doing the gear.
No, he was not doing. That was somebody. That was my friend Steve.
So this is where we're getting at. We're getting to the nitty-gritty. Yeah, no,
right here. My friend is a pastor. His name is Steve, and he lives up towards Oberlin. And he works with.
That's a ways away.
He works with.
Oh, not from here. From Medina, it's not.
Well,
an hour. Yeah,
but he works with. He's one of the higher ups in the Northeast Ohio Youth for Christ, and he saw a need for this type of program. And that's when I was getting back into the bike things, and I was like, really don't want to be working with kids, but then I, kind of felt this calling. I need to get outside of my comfort zone. I need to get outside of myself, outside of that box that I have myself closed in here, and provide this because I saw the need for it. I'm like, okay, let's do that. And then, Keith was like, hey man, you're doing this bike thing.
Ah, there we go.
We need
There
bikes.
we go.
We
Okay.
need bikes for some of these people in the sober living conditions so they can get back and forth to these different activities that they have to do. So I was like, sure, I'll give you a bike here. And I'm not trying to get too much into the religious aspect of it. Everybody
Yep.
has their different beliefs and everything. I was watching a podcast. The host was asking the guest, it was like, if you died and got to heaven, and you asked God why he allowed these things, these bad things in the world to happen, whether it be war or hunger or poverty or what have you, what do you think he would say? And the guest said, I don't think I would ask God that for fear that he would ask me the same question. And that just kind of stuck with me. And I was like, okay, I can't stop a war. I can't end world hunger. But I got to get in where I fit in. So I saw this where I could do outreach and I could affect people in this way. And that's where I've been kind of trying to hone in on, meet the needs of the people where I am best suited to help.
Is it not only what you do, but it's kind of the beginning statement that you said? I don't think we got it quite on camera, but why I asked on why you do this, and because you said that you believe that everybody, and I was like, let me start recording if we're going to do this. And so you said that you believe that everybody for free, and why it's so kind-hearted and deep-hearted and noble of you to do. You were saying,
well, this is where I will get into part of my spiritual and religious side. One of the things that struck me is that I am no better than anyone else. I still have the same struggles. I still have the same insecurities. But when I look at some of these people that I see who have been in recovery, I can say, Christ died for the least of these. And there is no one that I have ever met or looked at that God does not love. I did see that there was a need, and I found a way to give back. So that's the long and short of it. And helping people help themselves.
You took a lot of your expertise and knowledge and just the happenstance, and you could have said no. Like, are you retired? Well,
I am retired.
Military.
I'm
right?
retired military. Yes, I did 24 years.
Do you work full time? Your other job?
I work full time.
40?
Oh, 40 plus hours a week.
Okay, so it's not something that you are doing this to occupy your time. Just more time is being occupied to pay it forward.
Yeah, it didn't start that way. Like it all harkens back to that first bike. I used to work in a bike shop too, part time. But what I found is that when I was working on something, even back then, I'm learning every nook and cranny of the bike. I know exactly what parts I have. I know exactly what kind of effort went into that. So what I found is when I went back to cycling, I got this bike and I went through it. I found my center. I found something that I was good at, but I found something that I think maybe I had perhaps lost along the way, but I found solace in being able to turn this hunk of whatever it was that I just bought into something where it got to live again. So, and that's one of the parallels I draw between bikes and people. So usually when I get one of these bikes, I'll pull it out of a barn. It's covered in dust and it's scratched and everything on it is broken.
Yeah, we'll go to a couple of examples over here.
And what I was like, oh, let's rebuild these bearings. Let's put some new tires on it.
Not these ones, these are sealed.
No, let's straighten the rims. Let's rebuild the rim if we have to, But I find a parallel between a bike and a person. When I get a bike that I pull out of a barn, I typically don't fix all the scratches and stuff on it. I don't want it to be perfect because it's never really going to be perfect. Scratches on a bike are kind of like scars on people. whether it be a physical scar, an emotional scar, psychological scar. If we cover that up with paint, we're just covering it up. It doesn't really change anything about the bike. I don't restore bikes, I preserve bikes, and I put them back out there so they can fulfill what they are supposed to do. So if we look at the correlation between a bike and a person, you have think of what I do as kind of like bike therapy, I guess, right?
For
Yeah, for the bike.
cathartic?
For the bike, yeah. For the bike, because we're changing that aspect of the bike.
Just because it doesn't have emotion doesn't mean it doesn't appreciate it.
When we do this with people, we are getting them back to a position or a condition where they are functioning. We're never going to fix all the emotional scars. We're never going to fix any of the psychological scars. But we can help them function.
Better.
We can get them, we can help them function better. So if I can do this little bit, and provide a bike, I can fix this part of a bike. Maybe that part or that bike will go to a person who will say, someone cares about me.
And a story that'll go with that bike when they pay it forward. Either through the program or through they give it to their kid, or someone be like, hey, you know what? Here's a story behind this bike.
Right.
So I guess there's a lot of like strong emotional connection for you because it's stuff that you do and you're knowledgeable in, and it's great, and you do it for free, and a lot of the stuff you do pay for. There's an emotion attached to it, go by basis of the parallel that you were just saying. That's what it is, that you can make this thing work, and even if it's that, is 1% more than 0%? So even if you only add one little bit, that little bit added up. All those little 1 or 2 little percents add up.
It's an aggregate.
Yeah, exactly. Aggregate.
This is the antithesis of death by 1,000 cuts. This is healing by 1,000 hugs. Every little thing that we heal on a bike, whether it be taking something apart, cleaning it, greasing it, putting new cables, new cable housings, new brake pads, new saddle, new what have you. We can do that to people too. And it's not just about tires, and it's not the superficial things.
True.
We're not going to fix everything. But if we can make it 1% better here, 1% better there, now we're talking about an aggregate amount of healing.
Yeah.
So if it takes 1,000 hugs, it takes 1,000 hugs.
Yeah, most people like hugs. So is what we're going to do now. We're going to shift over and look at some of these bikes that he has that I believe you told me that are intended for the program.
Yes.
Okay.
So what we'll do is, I'll show you a few that are intended for the program, and I'll show you a few that are part of my collection that were in similar or worse shape. So I can show you what I do when I repair them. In essence, what we have is we have these bikes. I don't want to call them derelicts, but things have been, sometimes they get neglected, or the upkeep hasn't been performed on them, or they get left outside to rust and rot. And so what I do is I have these bikes that people bring me, and then I rebuild them for the program. So like I have a little red BMX style bike over here that might be used for the program, for just give away to a neighborhood kid. There's a white one over in here. It's like a hybrid type of thing. That will probably, because of its quality, will probably be rehabbed and sold, and then that money used to buy things like expendables for the program. A specialized mountain bike. Then there's a children's Trek mountain bike over here. I have one here that's mine. There's another Schwinn that's sitting over there, and then we get into some of the personal stuff. But we get these things. They're covered in mud. They're covered in grass. There's vines growing up. There's vines and vegetation growing up through the chain and stuff like that. So it's just a matter of taking it apart, taking inventory of what is usable and what is not usable. If it's not usable, it gets replaced, and that's where things like tires, saddles, cables, grips, things like that. There's a lot of these parts that can be rehabbed, but then there's some of them that are just, too far gone. So we get them in this condition. Some of them that I have in my collection, they have been way worse than that, but I have been able to bring them back.
But your skill and expertise has brought you to make transformations to bikes.
Yes. What we have here is a late 80s Muddy Fox Street Finder. Muddy Fox is kind of a rare brand here in the United States. And if you go over to the UK, they're everywhere. But over here in the United States, they're not so common. So I was out on a job and I was like, let me see what's in the area. I found this for like $30. This was ready to go to the scrap pile. So I got it back, found that there was a bunch of rust on it. The components on it were all pretty much just shot. So by virtue of being in this hobby or business, you're able to amass and accrue, a good variety of parts. So pretty much everything here came out of my parts bin, including the wheels, the brake set, crank, derailleurs, the handlebar, shifters, brake. The only thing that is really new on it was the seat post. And the saddle I got out of a bargain bin bike shop down in New Philadelphia, Ohio area. So the tires are new. The saddle is new. These are old grips, old handlebar. And I was like, Johnny, why would you put that much work into it? It's like, well, I'll tell you, I probably have the only Muddy Fox Street Finder in the entire state, and it rides like a champ. It's just great. Parked right behind it is a big chrome one that is for a coworker of mine that I'm building. And of course, proceeds for that will help offset things that I use like in the program. And then there's another back here. I don't even know if you can really see it back here. Is a 1988 Cannondale. Cannondale was one of the first mountain bikes, one of the first true mountain bikes I ever had.
That's quality.
Back in the early 90s. And I've always had a soft spot for them. I ended up having to paint about a third of that frame, and it got period correct upgrades.
So this is one that you had on the stand when I came in, and you showed me back in November when I dropped my bike off. And then you spoke quite a bit about it, and I am in awe because of its shininess.
Yes.
And just looking at its entire design is going to tell me. So I'm going to take a gander and say that this is probably early 80s.
Yes.
Okay.
So it is 1984. This is the Raleigh Grand Tour Teton. It is a heavy bike. There's no other way to put it. The steel that it was made with is not a higher end steel, but still I thought it was worthy of preservation. Number one, the guy I'm building it for, he's about 6'3", 6'4". He's a big guy. This is
my size.
This is a rather tall frame, and you start cleaning some of these old bikes up, and the quality with which they were built, especially the chrome. Now, chrome stuff is generally heavy, but it just shines like a new penny. Part of the thing is when I go riding, and if I'm stopped at a stop sign or I'm with some other riders or whatnot, and they will say, "What are you riding?" I say, "Oh, this is a Raleigh Teton, or this is a Muddy Fox Street Finder." But some of these other brands that I ride, like Univega or Klein or Kestrel. Kestrel is another one. It's an American company that was created here in America, the first carbon fiber monocoque chassis bike. People say, "What are you riding?" And that allows me to strike up a conversation, and then we can maybe get into a little bit of the history of it. So it's not just a fleeting thing. Oh, I used to have a mountain bike. For me, it represents a whole lot more. Not that I do a whole lot of mud and guts riding anymore, but
we can go back to it was your first bike.
My first bike.
Not this one, but it was your first bike. It's that memory. It's that everything that was involved in that's kind of sparked all the way to where we are today with it.
It's that first bike feeling, It's that, maybe if I can have that feeling by riding again, well, maybe I can get somebody else to feel that feeling as well. And, I think one of the things that we take for granted is that everybody had a bike when they were growing up. A lot of people didn't have a bike. I have met a few adults by virtue of buying, selling, trading, giving, whatever, who really don't have that much experience on a bike. And I have met a few who just recently learned how to ride. So if I can provide them that experience and say, oh, wow, I like this, I really like this, maybe that's something that they will hand down to their children. Instead of, being cooped up in the house all summer or playing video games or what have you, get them into a physical activity, something that they are really going to enjoy.
And that's why I biked a lot back in the 90s. I would throw on a rucksack, and you were military. I was never military, but I had a rucksack that had gear in it.
Yeah.
And where I lived in Brimfield, Ohio, I would, which is a couple counties
Yeah.
east
I
of
never
here.
went to
I would load up my rucksack with stuff, jump on my bike, which was like a $500-600 bike then, and go down to Magdala Reservoir, go ride it 8 miles, and I would hang out there. I'd camp out on the shoreline for a day, right? And I would just go ride those trails. Euphoric escape.
It is.
For that's what it was for me. Kind of end here. I still have more shopping to do, but I do want to say that John here does salvage stuff and keeps it from he keeps stuff from the landfill and finds a good purpose for it. So anyone who is reselling, and I say that in comments, I say that in videos, that is what we're doing. We're giving life to something that otherwise, especially if we find it at a thrift store, that's usually the last place where it goes. For those people who elect to donate it, that's the last place it goes before it goes to the dumpster, the landfill. And with disc media and physical media and books, kind of like that book I sold today and a lot of other stuff, that's what we do. That's what John does. And it's in multiple facets. So because when you ride, you do a lot more for yourself than keeping it from the landfill, because it would just be scrapped for $6.
Yeah.
You could probably get scrap price for a bike.
Scrap,
Who knows?
Yeah, it's all just scrap value, and it goes in the landfill, and you'll be shaving with it in 3 weeks. So,
True.
yeah.
So for whomever, everybody who stuck around a much longer video, I felt a lot of merit and just cause to have John opine on what he does, to kind of explain, and as he said earlier, expound on what he does in regards to that. Granted, it has nothing to do with physical media, nothing really to do with the channel, but every once in a while, as he said, you kind of got to get outside of that box, get outside of something in regards to what you're used to. So I think that's going to wrap that one up. So everyone, I appreciate it. Any of the links that are going to be needed for any information to help John out, to help out Keith.
Running to be well.
To be well, or any other programs or anything like that I can put in links or information, they will be below. But if you like what you heard, like what you saw, feel free to thummy thingy, comment, subscribe, share. Everything helps. Appreciate it. Thank you.